Hello and thanks for joining us on TVC Midday News. We begin this half hour in Ogun State, where a petrol tanker explosion has claimed 2 lives in the Ilo-Awela area of the Lagos-Abeokuta Expressway. The incident happened in the early hours of today. The victims were reportedly burnt beyond recognition when a tanker laden with petrol caught fire in an accident involving 5 persons. Spokesperson of the Federal Road Safety Corps in the state, Florence Okwe, said the incident happened around 1:30 a.m. and 12 vehicles were affected by the explosion. She added that 3 persons who were seriously injured have been taken to a general hospital, while the remains of the victims have been evacuated. Ms. Okwe said officials of the Corps, Fire Service, and other sister organizations have cordoned off the area to prevent another crash. Now, a bit of good news. All kidnapped passengers of the Kaduna-bound train attacked by terrorists on March the 20th have regained freedom. The latest among them are 23 passengers who had spent at least 7 months in captivity. A 7-man defense team assembled by the Chief of Defense Staff secured their release. Our correspondent Lupe Asum has details.
The 3 remaining AK-9 train passengers held hostage by terrorists have regained their freedom more than 6 months after their kidnap. The Secretary of the Chief of Defense Staff Action Committee, Usman Yusuf, said they were freed at about 4 p.m. on Wednesday. According to him, a 7-man presidential committee assembled by the Chief of Defense Staff, General Lucky Irabo, have taken custody of all of them. 28th of March 2022 is a day over 300 passengers on board the AK-9 Kaduna-bound train will never forget soon. They were ambushed by terrorists suspected to be members of the Ansar and Boko Haram insurgents. Survivors say lights in the AK-9 train went off, and what followed was the sound of gunshots everywhere. Government officials later confirmed that 8 people died, 26 others were injured, while over 60 passengers were feared kidnapped. Senior government and security officials immediately visited the scene of the attack, making promises of efforts to rescue kidnapped persons. Train services along the Kaduna-Abuja route were immediately suspended by the NRC. But while families of the slain victims mourned their losses, those of injured persons were in hospitals, watching over their loved ones with severe injuries. A group of others were left absolutely lost and confused, those whose relatives were kidnapped. Series of protests were held in Kaduna and Abuja, demanding for the release of those kidnapped and the sack of the transport minister. Series of videos were also released by the terrorists, who were seen to be torturing hostages in a bid to get ransom from their relatives and the attention of the government. The terrorists had also demanded for a hostage swap with their children and cohorts who they claim were in government's custody. It's unclear if that was done, but the first batch of 11 hostages were immediately freed shortly after. Some relatives of freed victims say they paid up to 100 million naira as ransom before their loved ones regained freedom. Atiku, the media aide to Sheikh Gumi, played a vital role in the release of several others. He was in September arrested by the DSS in Cairo and repatriated back to Nigeria for questioning. The military have recently intensified operations against terrorists in Kaduna and other northwest states, destroying several camps. The presidency has also promised an end to insecurity before the end of their administration. It remains to be seen how this will be done. Lupe Asson, TVC News, Kaduna.
Now let's briefly run you through some of the occurrences that shaped the 28th of March 2022, which will remain indelible in the minds of Nigerians. At around 7:45 p.m., hundreds of passengers traveling to Kaduna were kidnapped. 8 persons were left dead, with 41 others injured by the terrorists who attacked Kaduna-bound train. About 970 passengers were said to be on board. The train left Abuja's Idu station at 6 p.m. and was scheduled to arrive at the Rigasa train station in Kaduna by 8 p.m. According to eyewitness accounts, the train was bombed twice before the terrorists opened fire on travelers. Other 26 passengers were officially declared missing. As of the 4th of April, about 150 passengers were still unaccounted for. Now, those killed in that attack include a youth leader of the ruling All Progressives Congress, Amin Mahmood, a medical doctor, Chinelo Megafu Chinelo, A lawyer, Tibile Mosugu, Secretary General of Trade Union Congress, Barrister Musa Lawal Ozigi, a businessman, and 11 other captives were released in June. In the aftermath of the attack, the Nigerian Air Force conducted raids in the forest on the boundary of Niger and Kaduna State, killing no fewer than 34 terrorists. We move now to Delta State, where the police have arrested 16 persons in connection with the violent protests over alleged harassment by personnel of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission in Ughelli. The protest led to the deaths of one person, with others injured. Ikenna Amici has details.
Calm has returned to Ughelli after the Tuesday protest by youths who were unhappy over the alleged harassment and arrest by personnel of the EFCC. The Commissioner of Police is here to ascertain the level of damage caused during the protest, which lasted for hours, halting vehicular movement along the busy East-West Road.
The policemen were very, very professional, I must say, in handling the situation. And that is why you could see that despite the high-level provocation, there's little or no casualty. Because from the report gathered so far, it was the youth themselves that came out with all mannerisms of weapons, some brandishing AK-47 in their midst, some carrying pump action, some carrying petrol bombs, like the vehicles you are seeing, the damaged vehicles you are seeing.
The Delta State government is not pleased with what happened, which led to the death and destruction of property. Commissioner for Information says a thorough investigation will be done.
We have been able to receive some information as to the fact that the anti-corruption agency swooping on some persons, and there was an attempt to resist. Whether we like it or not, the EFCC is a creation of the Nigerian law. We want to believe that the EFCC is free to operate in any part of the country. We also believe that the EFCC knows that even in operating, that they must also operate within the confines of the law, as defined by the law setting them up. And that is why we are saying that a thorough investigation will be carried out.
Ughelli is infamously known for where the NSAS protests sparked off in 2020, and now this incident of youth who were allegedly questioned and arrested by the anti-graft agency over alleged internet fraud. Ikenna Amici, TVC News, Ughelli, Delta State.
The Senate has passed the 2023-2025 medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper. The approval follows the adoption of recommendations made by its Joint Committee on Finance, National Planning and Economic Affairs. Lawmakers were, however, divided over one of the committee's recommendations that suggests the cost of subsidy be capped at 1.7 trillion naira, which is far less than the 3.6 trillion naira initially proposed by the Executive. National Assembly correspondent Jesu Adeoye has details.
The Nigerian Senate is ready to welcome President Muhammadu Buhari to the National Assembly to present the 2023 Appropriation Bill on Friday. At the plenary, the Senate considered the report of its Joint Committee on the 2023 to 2025 Medium-Term Expenditure Framework and Fiscal Strategy paper. Among its recommendations, the committee suggests that the cost of the petroleum subsidy be capped at 1.7 trillion naira, different from the 3.6 trillion naira earlier proposed by the executive. This reduction will mean the government will save 737.31 billion naira, which will in turn reduce the budget deficit from 11.3 trillion naira to 10.56 trillion naira.
Cap at 1.7 trillion accordingly for 2023, and all relevant agencies of the government be required to take necessary action to keep this petroleum subsidy cost to government within 1.7 trillion ceiling in 2023. And by this action, a savings of 737 billion ceiling in 2020, a saving of 737 will be saved, and this should be used to reduce the deficit of 11.3 trillion naira. as contained in the MTF FSP document of the government. 8, that the fiscal deficit of 11.73.
Lawmakers, however, strongly kicked against this recommendation. They argue that it is not feasible and should be reversed to the original figure. After an extensive debate, the matter was put to a voice vote and the Senate adopted the recommendations as amended. In view of the current global realities, the oil benchmark price is pegged at $70 per barrel, while daily crude oil production is at 1.69 million barrels per day, and the exchange rate is put at 435 naira to a dollar. The federal government also retained the projected revenue estimate at 8.46 trillion naira, the GDP growth rate at 3.75%, and the inflation growth rate projected at 17.16%. TJ Swadio, TVC News, Abuja.
Now, the Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation, Olorunimbe Mamora, has assured Nigerians that the federal government wants a sustainable implementation of the Presidential Executive Order 5, as it will enhance research and fast-track economic growth. Maria Mohammed has details.
For years, Nigeria's science, technology and innovation sector has been on a quest to drive the nation's economic growth. This has been difficult to achieve, but with the Presidential Executive Order 5 in place, the nation is expected to have a knowledge-based economy. This will aid the country in achieving its aim of becoming the most industrialized nation in Africa. This is why the ministry and relevant stakeholders in the sector have embarked on a national dialogue with the theme Achieving Nigeria's Competitiveness and Improved Foreign Exchange Earnings through the STI. At this event, the Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation, Olorunimbe Mamora, urged stakeholders to deliberate extensively in preferring solutions to various challenges faced by the nation in order to achieve economic prosperity.
It is my firm belief that sustainable implementation of this order will lift our economy and put us back on track to economic progress.
The Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation, Henry Ikechukwu, disclosed that the nation needs to develop the STI sector as it can achieve the economic transformations it needs.
Establishment and implementation of this Technology and Innovation Center will serve as a hub.
Stakeholders on their part declared their support for the ministry but urged the ministry to look at the implementation strategy and also sensitize citizens on the need to export more and import less.
Calling on the government through the minister to please look at the implementation strategy, and we are ready to be part of any body that will help in making sure that
our economy can continue to grow is when we export more. That our economy can continue to grow.
Participants of this dialogue are encouraged to produce effective and efficient national strategy documents which will guide the use of STI to resolve the nation's economic problems. Maria Mohammed, TVC News, Abuja.
The president of the National Industrial Court, Benedict Kanyip, has noted that in adjudicating labor disputes, it is better to have a bad judgment quickly than a good one too late. He says this is a guiding principle sanctioned by the International Labour Organization. He was speaking at a special court sitting to mark the 2022-2023 legal year of the Industrial Court. Judiciary correspondent Celestina Area reports.
The first legal year ceremony of the National Industrial Court was held in October 2020. Since its establishment in 1976, its primary mandate has been the dispensation of labor justice to parties that come before it. Today, it holds its second legal year ceremony, as that of 2021-2022 was missed due to unavailability of funds with the theme Labor Justice and Socio-Economic Development.
It is better to have a bad judgment quickly than a good one too late. It's a guiding principle sanctioned by the International Labour Organization, ILO. This does not mean that we deliberately go out of our way to deliver bad judgments.
The Attorney General of the Federation, in commending the efforts put in by the National Industrial Court, alludes to the recent ruling delivered by the court on the interlocutory injunction filed by the federal government against the striking university lecturers. The court had ordered the lecturers to return to the classroom.
The legal status of any strike action, let alone a protracted one, raises very crucial questions of law and the approach with which the judges of the National Industrial Court have dealt with the related issues.
The issues surrounding invasion of judges' houses are still dominating public space, particularly due to invasion by security operatives of the home of a justice of the Court of Appeal in Kano in September 2022.
Somebody must be held responsible, and that responsibility means accountability, and there must be a public apology to the judiciary by the Chief Legal Officer of the Federation or whoever is the head of that unit that invaded the home of a justice of the Court of Appeal.
It is only your lordship and myself and other colleagues who would see injustice and know, oh, that is injustice. And who will also immediately begin to think of the remedy to provide in order to deal with that injustice.
Pursuant to Section 254C, subsection 3, the National Industrial Code established an alternative dispute resolution center whose mandate is restricted to only mediation, especially individual employment labor disputes.
Ogun State Governor Dakwa Abiodun has rewarded teachers and school administrators with houses and cash gifts. The gesture is to commemorate the World Teachers' Day in the state. TVC News' Kazim Olowe has details.
It was a special day for teachers in Ogun State. The day was celebrated with the governor and members of his cabinet. The teachers converged on the MKO Abiola Stadium, Kuto, Abeokuta. They appreciate the efforts of the state governor so far, but want him to do more.
In spite of continuous growth of school enrollment in most areas of the state, this has led to overcrowding class size in our schools. Your Excellency, though economy across the world is gradually improving, so there is urgent need to recruit more teachers into our schools on a permanent basis.
Ogun Teach is not only timely, but healthy, laudable, and commendable mechanism to ameliorate the challenges posed by the spirit of retirement, death, and transfer of jobs to other agencies. We appreciate Your Excellency, sir.
On his part, the governor rewarded outstanding teachers, school administrators, and schools. He also offered employment to the wife of a teacher in Odeda local government who died during a welfare meeting involving members of the Nigerian Labour Congress in July 2022.
Mr. Ogujimi left behind a wife who this administration has decided that will be supporting her by immediately offering her employment instantly. We have decided that we will endeavor to clear arrears, and from January 2023, we will pay leave bonuses with your salaries every month, so we will not have any outstanding.
The governor commended the teachers for their efforts in nation building and described them as career molders. Kazim Olowe, TVC News, Abeokuta.
Talking some politics now, the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Atiku Abubakar, has promised that if elected, his administration will give 60% of appointments to women and youth. He encouraged his supporters to go beyond street marches and campaign rallies to ensure the People's Democratic Party wins their polling units in next year's presidential election. He said this when he unveiled the She Campaign head office in Abuja, spearheaded by his wife. The wife of the PDP presidential candidate said the She Campaign is an all-inclusive good governance initiative that prioritizes security, health, and education.
In every election cycle, there is a change in strategy. This election is not about rallies at all. This election is not about opening beautiful offices like this. This election is about delivering your unity. If you want us to look after you or your group, deliver your unit. If you don't deliver your unit, don't come to us and say, look, oh, I was following you on rallies, or I have opened this office or the other.
I believe that the future of sustainable democracy must be built on the foundation of sustainable development, powered by the strong commitment of sustainable leadership to steer this great nation to meet its potential through the empowerment of women, youth, and persons with disabilities across Nigeria.